in International Relations as well as a Bachelor in Political Science Honours from Jadavpur University, Kolkata. Notably, Mr. Bandyopadhyay also received national level prize in the 12th National Youth Parliament organized by the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, Government of India. We eagerly look forward to gaining insights from his vast knowledge. Without further ado, I invite Sir to address the audience.
Thank you, Vanshika, for this wonderful introduction. And I would like to begin by thanking the entire Loreto College for having me here. I would like to thank the principal, and the head of the department, Shavni Patra ma'am, and all the faculty members for inviting me and giving me this prestigious occasion to address all of you. So I would like to start by telling you about that, by taking you the journey of something which is very close to my heart. So it's a critical assessment of India's climate policies and the present era. So I would look into how the entire climate policies has shifted and how it is panning out in the days to come. So I would like to start with what is climate policy. So Navroz Dubash and Aditya Pillai, that has defined climate policies in a very beautiful manner. It's a policy where climate nodes are connected and they're spread across government and they're stitched together by relatively weak and unstable cross-ministerial coordination and strategy bodies. So the idea is climate policy is everything which design and which affects us on a day-to-day basis. It is related to climate, and climate is something which is bigger than the weather. The weather is a day-to-day experience of the entire atmospheric biome which we experience every day, and climate is something which is going to consider of a more considerable period of time, a weather over a more considerable period of time. So I would like to talk about that how I've divided the entire presentation. I have divided the entire presentation by looking into how India's climate policies have transformed in this century. We have a rich history, and India, after independence, has been navigating this entire uh, yeah, has been navigating this entire climate policies. So I would look into that. Then I will look into how does Manmohan Singh and Narendra Modi policies differ. Is it a tale of continuity or change? And then what is the third part? Then it will look into what is India's strategy to negotiate internationally under the umbrella of climate diplomacy. And lastly, I would look into the domestic scenario, that how India's domestic politics have been affected by India's climate policies and how it is reflected in the election manifestos of various mainstream political parties in India. So there are four broad themes: how India's climate policies have transformed, the continuity and change of Manmohan Singh and Modi, the Indian strategy, how India's negotiate internationally under climate diplomacy, and how India's domestic politics are affected by climate policies. So, firstly, I would like to begin by the history. So, the entire history of India's climate politics, as far as Navroj K. Dubash. Dubash is a very famous and a very renowned climate politics scholar. He's a professor of CPR, Center for Policy Research. And so he says that Indian entire story of climate politics can be divided into three broad narratives. The first narrative, which started from 1970 onwards, is the growth first Stonewallers. Then we moved into progressive realist. And later on, now we are in the progressive internationalist phase. So now you may be wondering, what are the three phases? So without further ado, I will take you into the journey of growth first Stonewallers. So there's a broad consensus in all the three schools that India has leapfrogged from the sidelines as a sticking point in climate negotiation, from being a deal breaker to a deal maker. It has showcased in 2009 that by using co-benefit strategy, that how India can become a net zero powerhouse, and it want to achieve net zero kind of renewable energy powerhouse and want to achieve net zero by 2070. So growth first Stonewallers, the entire journey starts with Indira Gandhi. So Indira Gandhi went to Stockholm Summit, the United Nations Conference of Human and Environmental and Development, UNHED, and then he went there and she said that poverty is the biggest polluter, and so developing countries like India shouldn't be told to be part of the solution, which they have not created. So they have not created the problem. They were not industrializing. They were a colony, and so the entire problem has been created, by the developed West. So she said that at that point of time, 1970s, vast proportion of Indians were underdeveloped. Then India needed rapid economic growth. India needed rapid electrification. India was a very energy-hungry country, and so it said very clearly that we cannot be a part of any climate mitigation, climate adaptation talks. Any talk about climate mitigation from developing country is a new colonial agenda, and we won't be part of environmental colonialism. So she was very clear that we are not going to be a part of it. It's it's the problem you have created, and you need to be a part of the solution. And this was a very big prominent idea at that point of time. The growth first stonewallers. So I will like to talk about that how that the problem come out. The entire cumulative greenhouse gas emission from 1850 2012. If you see this chart, India is just 5% of emissions, and the entire chart is full of USA 20% of the emission, European Union 17% of the emission, and People's Republic of China is 12% of the emission. So this USA, European Union, China, they make up around 50% of the emission, and India has only created 5% of the historic emission. And then if you look at this chart, this chart talks about the per capita emission. So what is per capita? Per capita is when you divide the entire gross national emission, what India emits, like it's around 4,000 million tons per annum. If you divide it by 1.4 billion people, you will see that India, is even half of the global average. When India is not even close to USA, like in average US citizen emits 14.7 14.7 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per annum. An average European citizen emits 6 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per annum. But an average Indian citizen emits only 2 tons, which is even half of the global average. So India is not creating the problem. But this is the chart after the third chart, which is very important because all the developed countries, like, and all the Republicans of USA, they will go up on stage and they will say that India is part of the problem. India is the third largest emitter. They will say that India is creating climate change, India is creating global warming, and they will show this chart. So the entire debate is based on these three charts, because the first two charts are the charts which all developing countries show and which more or less has the same similar kind of goal. And India always talks about in this climate policy debates. In this third chart, the gross national emission is something which is talked about by developed countries, that India is the third largest emitter. India needs to be more active in climate action. India needs to be do more on climate adaptation, climate mitigation. So when you see recently saw the Kamala Harris and Trump debate. So they said that China and India, Trump said that China and India needs to take more aggressive climate mitigation measures. So the entire debate is based on this chart of gross national emission. Now, you can understand that India is in a very unique position, because nationally it is the third largest environmental polluter, but as per historical liability, as per capita basis, we hardly share any historical responsibility compared to other developed countries. Per capita is you divide the entire emissions divided by number of population. So we hardly share any historical responsibility. So now the question is, what is the growth first Stonewallers say? So this was a very dominant view of in all Indians, and this was a very dominant view was put forward by various scholars in that period. So Anil Agarwal, Sunil Narayan, both people who work for Center for Science and Environment, a very prominent environmental think tank. They put forward a view in a very influential report which came out in 1970s, that global warming in an unequal world. They said that all emissions which Indians did at that point of time were emissions of agriculture, were emissions of cattle stock, methane, and they were emissions which are survival emission, which Indians need to do to grow, to live, and to have a decent quality of life, which is guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. But all the emission which US did were luxury emission, like ACs, heating, then multiple devices, then multiple cars. And so they showed by various reports, like Center for Science and Environment of India, it came out with contradictory reports. I showed you the charts of per capita emission, I showed you the chart of historical liability. So CSC came out with this chart, and it showed that world that completely contradicting World Resource Institute charts of USA. World Resource Institute is a US based think tank. It contradicted them and told them that we are very less historical liability, we have very less liability, and we have very less historical liability, and we have very less liability in terms of per capita emission. So you cannot put us in the same bracket. So India started advocating since 1992, when United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change was formed. India started advocating for CBDR RC framework. What is CBDR RC? CBDR is common but differentiated responsibility as per respective capacities. So we'll only involve in climate mitigation, climate adaptation if you fund us, if you give us technology. Otherwise, we are not going to do anything. So it is a common problem, but we have differentiated responsibilities as per respective capacity and as per the respective contribution to in creating this problem. So the very famous people like the diplomats and the entire Indian Foreign Service fraternity used to subscribe to this growth first Stonewaller. Sam Sharan, who was the Prime Minister's special envoy to climate change in 2009 under Manmohan Singh, and Chandrasekhar Dasgupta, who Ambassador Chandrasekhar Dasgupta, he also negotiated for India during the CBDR-RC framework and in 1992 when Rio de Janeiro summit was being held. So both these people they believe that we cannot have a apartheid kind of regime where there is a nuclear non-proliferation treaty kind of framework. So you all know about NPT. NPT says that 1968, if you have tested your nuclear weapon for 1968, you are a nuclear power. You can keep the weapons and you can do whatever you feel like with them. But if you have tested it afterwards, then you are a non-nuclear power and you cannot do it. So Sham Sharan and Chandrasekhar Dasgupta they advocate that there cannot be an NPT kind of framework under climate change. Yeah, so we have to make sure that all countries have the same amount of same amount of access to carbon space, same amount of access to carbon equity, and we all of us have the right to develop. And just because you arrived there first by industrial revolution, you will develop and we will be left behind. This can't go on, and this can't happen. So this growth for stone dwellers is also making a very interesting argument. So normally the myth is that all of us know that myth is that whenever a country develops, the country grows, then automatically all the emissions starts transforming into luxury emissions. And so US and the European Union, France, all these developed countries, they advocate that India will develop, India will start making luxury emissions, and it will automatically lead to unsustainable consumption based lifestyle of the developed countries. And so we cannot afford to have an Indian unsustainable lifestyle of 1.4 billion people. So Pudipta Ghosh argues that Indian entire lifestyle is based on sustainability. That DC's media, like developed countries media, they are having a myth, and they're having a, arguing that you should keep your resources under the ground. It is called the keep it in the ground framework. Like if you have coal, if you have oil, you keep it in the ground, you don't extract it, you don't exploit it. Purita Ghosh argues, he's a very famous scholar of TERI, Tata Energy Research Institute. He argues that we can't keep it in the ground, we have to take it out, we have to exploit it. And when we exploit it, it will be very based on sustainability, because Indian lifestyle has always been based on lifestyle for environment. It is based on sustainability, it is based on on living along with nature. So we won't use irresponsibly like the developed countries do and pollute the environment. So our growth will be completely sustainable based. So the argument is now the next school of thought. So this entire thing was going on till 2009. 2009, from 1970, Stockholm summit, where Indira Gandhi gave the statement that poverty is the biggest polluter. Till 2009, this entire debate was going on, and the entire dominant narrative was that growth first, stonewallers. Then we moved to the progressive realist phase. So Navroz Dubash says this phase started with the famous statement of Jairam Ramesh. So Jairam Ramesh, when in 2009 went to the Copenhagen summit. So Copenhagen summit was all over the news. Manmohan Singh was going, Barack Obama was going in an algae car, and Manmohan Singh was going in a methane car. So we are all trying to use renewable energy technologies to go there. And it started talking about in this phase, India's for the first time committed to voluntary mitigation cuts. So for the first time, we said that if you even don't give us technology, even if you don't give us funding, then also we will do voluntary mitigation cuts. And why we said that? Because India thought that it needs to be part of the solution. Just a moment. India needs to be part of the solution. So because that a lot of reports were coming at that phase, and India was also having a lot of pressures on the foreign policy front. So I will look into the foreign policy pressures later on. I will also look into the domestic pressure which led to this shift. But in terms of India said that we are going to move to a per capita plus negotiation. We are still going to advocate for technology. We are still going to advocate for funding, but we are also going to do something by ourselves. So we launched the National Action Plan for Climate Change. We said that we are going to have development with co-benefits. What is co-benefits? Co-benefits is that we will do both. We will do both development. We will do both and protection of the environment. And we believe that climate change is unfair, and climate change is a problem which all the humanity faces. But we are still going to say that CBDR RC, common but differentiated responsibility as per respective capacity. But we are also be more active in taking action in the climate change in a domestic front. So these two people, the very famous scholars, Navroz K. Dubash and Anirudh Mohan. Navroz K. Dubash, as I told you, is a professor of CPR, and Anirudh Mohan is a postdoc fellow in Princeton University. So Dubash said that we need to we move from a into a more flexible approach, into a more bottom-up pledge and a review process. Where what India did was India promised by themselves that we are going to fulfill these goals, fulfill these targets, and they will themselves review it. So there is no third-party involvement, there is no third-party pressure, and our sovereignty remains intact. In terms of Anirudh Mohan talks about that what are the pulls and pressures which moved India to adopt this phase of voluntary mitigation cuts. Because we see that from Ramesh Dip, when Jairam Ramesh changed India's dominant position from growth first stonewallers to progressive realists, we see that it has gone into an irreversible path. And Jairam Ramesh was later on removed because it was considered too radical at that point of time. So after 26 months, he was removed. And Jayanti Natarajan came as a new environment minister. But eventually, did not change the dominant position. And she also believed that India need to move towards a voluntary mitigation cuts, where India needs to be part of the solution, because a lot of literature was also coming of IPCC reports, Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, Climate Vulnerability Index, Climate Vulnerability Index, Environmental Protection Index. All these reports were saying that India is a most vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable country, top 10 vulnerable countries in terms of climate change. And when you are really vulnerable, the most affected people are the most marginalized, the most exploited. Like whenever in West Bengal we have any floods, any people who live in Shundabons, the most marginalized people, they are the ones who lose their homes, lose their livelihood, and lose everything. So India thought that if we need to do something by ourselves itself, and we cannot be growth first stonewallers. When we do something, we need to show that we are doing it for the greater good, we are doing it for the greater humanity, and we are doing it for as a responsible environmental power. So that's how beautifully India packaged its environmental policies. And National Action Plan of Climate Change came in 2008. We had the Ramesh Dip in 2009, like Ramesh change in Copenhagen summit. And then we see that India is going through a lot of pulls and pressure. Like Anmol Mukhya, Xiang Zhang, Zualong Zhu, and Anmol Mukhya. First two are Chinese scholars, and the third is an Indian scholar. So all of them write on climate change. They argue that a lot of domestic and foreign events were happening, which was influencing India on both levels, on a domestic level, on an international level, which makes India change its stance from post Copenhagen and post Cancun summits. Cancun was 2010, Copenhagen was 2009. So you know that every year since 1992, you have a COP Conference of Parties Summit. Last time it was in Dubai. This year it will be in Baku, Azerbaijan. So every year you have this summit in which the head of the states go, environment minister go, and some summits are very important because like Copenhagen Summit, Paris Summit, Glasgow Summit, they are very important because of the resolution they came out with. So in terms of domestic pressure, India was facing pressure, a lot of pressure from the business houses, because we had economic liberalization in 1990s. We had Kyoto Protocol in 1997, and after Kyoto Protocol, we had a clean development mechanism. So all these developed countries, they were asking for carbon trading. So what is carbon trading? That all nations, as per the Kyoto Protocol, India was in the annexed tool. So India did not have any binding responsibility as per Kyoto. But all nations as per Kyoto Protocol can do carbon trading, and carbon trading, you have a fixed carbon space. So if you consume more than your carbon space, you need to pay the people who are consuming less. So India thought that as per capita emission, it is consuming less, and so India can get money. So if India is part of all these ventures, and India's business houses can also benefit, and all Indian business houses also started becoming MNCs, multinational corporations. So they wanted to do trading with various countries across the globe, and so they were putting pressure on the government of India to do something on climate. And Jagdish Thakkar and Anthony Lestrovich, two European scholars, they argued that India also realized that India realized the benefits of co-benefits paradigm. What co-benefits is better for India, it's more sustainable for India, and if the growth is green, based on green energy, if the growth is sustainable, then it will automatically lead to better outcome and better livelihood for the Indians. And Jairam Ramesh also argued in his book that how India was negotiating between the environment versus the development debate, because at the end of the day, India is a very country with a lot of demands, with a huge population, with an energy hungry country, ambitious country, very high demographic dividend. And when you have all these qualities, you have a lot of pressure on the policymakers, because they want to protect the environment. They also want to ensure speed and fast egalitarian growth, inclusive growth for all the population. So I will tell you a wonderful story, and I will tell you about the Manmohan Singh's face, about Jairam Ramesh books. He has written a wonderful book called Green Signals, Ecology, Growth, and Democracy in India. So I will tell you a story from that book. It's a wonderful anecdote. I genuinely hope you will love it. So next phase was 2014 onwards. Next phase 2014 onwards when Narendra Modi came to power. So when he came to power, we moved into a progressive internationalist phase, where we said that we are just not going to be part of the solution. We are going to decide and explicitly, influence the countries to and be a climate leader. We are going to have a strong climate regime, and climate impacts hurt the poor the most, so this is going to benefit us the most. And Narendra Modi had the advantage of time, because 2014 was after 2009, and a lot of things has already happened in terms of India already was part of already got an NPT waiver, non-proliferation treaty waiver. India was part of, with a close embrace with USA after India US civil nuclear deal. And India was no longer a no longer an outcast, because after the Pokhran 1998 nuclear blast, Pokhran 2, we had to face a lot of sanctions. But after 2005, we got rid of all the sanctions, and we are very much part of the international community, and we were very much part of the growth story, because at that point of time, the Goldman Sachs came with a report called BRICS. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. South Africa came later in 2010, but all these countries were thought that they are the biggest and most emerging economies, which are going to be looked out for. So India was developing growth rate of 7 to 8% per annum, and India was thought as a country which everyone can look out for. It was a democracy. It was going to compete with China. Then it is emerging so fast. It is a very vibrant service sector, and all these factors contributed into to India to adopt a progressive internationalist phase, where India thought that it need to be more pragmatic, and needs to seize the moment, to be a climate leader, to be a leader in renewable technology, can throw India's weight towards climate action, because developed countries like USA, China, European countries, France, Britain, all of them have created this problem, and they were very reluctant to take the leadership. So India thought it is India's century, and India can become a global leader. I will tell you in more details. Like India launched Indian Solar Alliance, coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure, to portray India's leadership. And recently, we also have the International Solar Festival in New Delhi. Like on 4th and 5th of this month, we have the International Solar Festival, in which 120 countries participated. So I will now go into the two most dominant climate policies of this century, Narendra Modi and Manmohan Singh. So I would like to tell you about the context of Manmohan Singh. So the context of Manmohan Singh is very interesting, because the context is that the negotiation was going on, text-based negotiation was going on under Kofi Annan for United Nations Security Council. India wanted to be join the Security Council as a as a permanent member, which is a long-standing demand of India. So during that time, India really was doing text-based negotiation. India was trying to be a part of the NPT. India was trying to be a part of the MTCR, Australia Group, Wassenaar Arrangement, and then India was also negotiating with USA, which we know as the Indo-US civil nuclear deal. And India was also part of the BRICS. So when all these things were going on, the BRICS as a country were facing increasing pressure, internationally, to do something, because AUSIS Association of Small Island States, countries like Maldives, where all the Bollywood stars go for vacation, countries like Tuvalu, Kiribati, they all face existential threat of submergence. They can go underwater in the next 50 to 60 years. So all these countries, they were also putting a lot of pressure on India, that if you want a vote in the United Nations General Assembly, if you want to win elections of International Court of Justice, of various human bodies, then you need to do something on climate change. So in Manmohan Singh and was under this kind of pressure. And Manmohan Singh, foreign, environment minister like Jairam Ramesh, he said that we need to do something on our own. So we saw the Ramesh dip, where Jairam Ramesh changed the stance, which I told you about. And the problem is, in a country like India, you try to do balancing, because you need to develop fast growth, and you also need to develop environmental priorities are safeguarded. So you are inadequate for both the camps. But in this age, we also see a lot of new things are happening, like environmental impact assessment coming. Like whenever in hydroelectric projects are coming up, you need to do an EIA study, environmental impact assessment, to judge how much environment will be affected. And if the environmental impact is very high, then you will not get a go ahead for the project. Then we see National Green Tribunal coming up in 2010. What is National Green Tribunal? That all cases related to pollution, environmental protection, then environmental safeguard, they need to be, they need to be taken up by the National Green Tribunal, which will be a body not just of judges, it will be a body of specialists, it will be a body of climate activists, it will be a body of of people who are, of human right advocates. So it will be a comprehensive body. If you see the NGT Act, and whom you have a lot of specialists along with the lawyers, along with the people from judiciary. So we are also have an NGT bench in Kolkata, and the headquarters is in, the principal bench is in Delhi. Then we have National Action Plan of Climate Change. It came out in 2008. We have 8 pillars under that, and we also have promised that we are going to do something on solar energy. We also came out with acts like Forest Right Act for so that the scheduled tribes who lived in the forest, they can also have access to minor forest produce. They can also have the access to bamboo, then various mahua leaves and honey and all these things which they get from the forest. They can use them. So all these acts, which are considered revolutionary in time for environment protection, they were coming in this age under Manmohan Singh. And we also see a wonderful debate happening. So now I will tell you the story of Jairam Ramesh. So Jairam Ramesh has written in his book, The Green Signals. So in this book, he talks about in the Green Signals, ecology, growth, and democracy in India. That Jairam Ramesh, when he was made the environment minister, he got a brief. He got a brief that he need to ensure environment protection and also ensure fast economic growth. They were very competing priorities, but he took up the challenge and he said that I will do that. Then normally India is very much dependent of coal, as most of you know that India's 50 to 60% of the energy electricity generation in India is through coal, and most of the coal is very low quality. So sometimes we have to export, and sometimes we also have to generate from our own Indian soils. So most of the coal places which are rich in coal are in forest. So the Jairam thought that we will make a system where we'll create a go and no go classification of all the forest. So all the coal rich areas, we will categorize them. These are the areas which can be exploited, and these are the areas which cannot be exploited. So coal ministry said, wonderful. So we don't need to take any permission from you if we are doing any mining in a go area which has been already earmarked for excavation and for mining. So the entire forest of India started being marked for by the environment ministry to and the coal ministry. But when the marking was done and the marking was in process, coal ministry realized we are in a deep country, we are in deep dilemma. Why? Because the most of the coal rich areas, they're falling under the very high biodiversity rich forest. And so environment ministry is saying that these are the places where you have high level of biodiversity, high level of wildlife, high levels of elephants, tigers, rhinoceros, and so this cannot be exploited. This cannot be this cannot be exploited, this cannot be mined. And the ministry decided that we need to sidetrack. And it made environment ministry and the Jairam Ramesh as a scapegoat. It complained to the Prime Minister that Jairam Ramesh is creating problems for coal mining, and for him, we are facing a coal shortage in India. And coal shortage is automatically leading to non-availability of electricity, is automatically leading to non-availability of electricity in home, industry, and stopping the India's growth story of 7 to 8% per annum. So Jairam Ramesh was in a dilemma. What should I do? So he went to the Prime Minister and explained his position. So Manmohan Singh said that this is a very tricky situation. So whatever whatever things you need to say, like whatever objections you have, you can put that in writing, and we will constitute a high-level committee under Pranab Mukherjee. So a committee was constituted under Pranab Mukherjee. So whenever coal ministry and environment ministry used to find themselves at the loggerheads, whether this forest can be exploited, whether this forest can be mind. Then they always used to go to the Pranab Mukherjee-led high-level ministerial committee, and they used to take final call, because India as a country always has to face competing priorities between exploiting the Sal forest of Jharkhand, or giving land to the Steel Authority of India, allowing Navi Mumbai extension by cutting off the mangroves in Maharashtra, or protecting the mangroves by not allowing the extension. So India always has to have this competing kind of priorities, and this competing kind of priorities make policy making so difficult for Indian policymakers when it comes to climate politics. Now, Modi ji came to power in 2014 with running a historic mandate. And as Rajiv Bhogra writes in his book, the how my Prime Minister shapes Indian foreign policy, then Modi brings his own charisma, brings his own flavor, because at the end of the day, Like, he had spent a considerable amount of time in governance. He has spent around 10 years as a Gujarat chief minister. He has spent a lot of time, in teaching people and running the government. And so he, with his own charismatic style, wanted to change the global norm-based order and live, the imprint of India. So he did not wait and to learn on the job. He said that I will start doing what I do the best, and I already know how it's being done. So we see three broad themes under Prime Minister Modi. The first theme is how India is transforming into into a new nation, adopting a confident leadership role, and how it uses various tangible and intangible instruments. So to gain greater leverage at the world stage. So we see that Vyoma Jha is another scholar who writes regularly on Indian foreign policy. She argues that how India, as a country, has been launching initiative like International Solar Alliance, which has been launched by India and France in 2014, like CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Which was launched after the COVID. It was launched before the COVID, but it became more famous after the COVID because all of us realized that we cannot be completely dependent on China. We need to be have diversification, and when you have diversification, then you need to have more resilient infrastructure available from various other corners. So India started to become a Vishwa Guru and a Vishwa Mitra, and India started to become tried to become a renewable energy powerhouse, where India started making promises. Like in the Paris Climate Summit, India made a promises that it will generate 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022, and India achieved it before even 2022. Then India in 2021 again promised that 50% of India's energy mix till 2030 will be from renewable energy technology. India launched national solar mission, national wind mission. India started geothermal energy. India started, oceanographic, tidal energy. So India was trying to be a powerhouse, of renewable energy and renewable technology. And India started trying to start a lot of initiative like FAME. FAME is a government scheme in which you give subsidies and incentive to electric vehicles. So we see that all these initiatives are happening under Narendra Modi, because Narendra Modi wanted to put India, under the map of global climate leadership. The idea was very simple, that when developed countries are not taking the leadership, India should not shy away from taking his role as a responsible, sustainable climate partner. And in 2021, you also saw how Narendra Modi and Antonio Guterres, both of them launched the lifestyle for environment, in which Narendra Modi declared that our lifestyle has been made from the environment, has been designed from the ethos of the environment. And so even if we grow, it will be very sustainable growth, it will be very green growth. And then also we move to the second theme. What is the second theme? The second theme is that Mukul Sharma is another very scholar who is doing research in, he's a PhD scholar who research on climate politics. So he argues that Hindu nationalism is also being depicted, in India's climate policies and climate politics. So how does that work? So he analyzed the RSS Organizer magazine. RSS Organizing magazine is one of the mouthpiece of RSS, the Rashtriya Swam Sevak Sangh. And when you analyze the RSS Organizer magazine, you understand that what are the priorities of the RSS and the BJP party in general. So the priorities are very simple. They want to prioritize the Bharatvarsha, the resources of India, they belong to Bharatvarsha, they belong to India, and they need to be protected. So Ganga is a Ma. So as a Ganga's son, now Modi calls himself Ganga's son. So we have the Ganga Regeneration Mission, which is a very and we have the national. We also have the Minister of Jal Shakti having a lot of funds, like 5,000 crores for the promotion and the cleaning of Ganga. Then we also have missions like National Solar Mission, because Surya, National Vayu Mission for wind. Hmm. So the idea is very simple, that all these India's resources, they're very prominent. We worship them, we love them, and they need to be protected. And we also see a wonderful dichotomy, which is the third phase of Modi's promises, because in terms of hard tangible growth, in terms of employment, the priorities are also very similar, which we see in the next slide, that in terms of what wins you elections are won by hard tangible growth. They're won by development, they're won by employment. So as all of us know that animals are not going to go and vote, wildlife is not going to go and vote. And so environmental conservation is not never an electoral issue. So Nandita Das, like, then Leo Saldhana, they argue that when it comes to election issues, like when it comes to renewable energy technology, when it comes to fast environmental clearances, India is taking a wonderful position. India is taking a wonderful position. So the idea is that India is trying to make sure whenever we have any fast whenever India is trying to make sure that whenever it comes to pollution, pollution, when it comes to Ganga, Ganga cleaning, Ganga sewage treatment plan, then India is doing a phenomenal job. But whenever it comes to environmental conservation, when it comes to forest conservation, India is when it comes to biodiversity conservation, India is making those laws very flexible. When you make laws flexible under the garb of ease of doing business, because Narendra Modi believes that India needs to improve its rank, which, but now the ranking has gone of the World Bank, and it has been removed. But the India needs to ensure that it has getting a good position and good reputation and the ease of doing business, for which you need a single window clearance. When you and for which you have a Parivesh portal. So any industrial like Adani, Ambani, when you want to open an industry, you just go into the Parivesh portal, you just give all your details and say that you want to open industry here, and then you get the single window clearance for opening the industry. So it's very fast, very systematic. But the problem is when you make it very fast and very systematic, you have to automatically make the laws weak. So we see the Environmental Impact Assessment Amendment Act, we see the Biodiversity Amendment Act, we see the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act, we see the Coastal Zone Regulation Amendment Act. So all these laws which have been made under the previous regime, they were amended and they were made more flexible in terms of making it easier to exploit. Like earlier, I will just to give an example. Earlier, the rule was that when you do environmental impact assessment, you have to do it for at least 2 seasons, and one of them has to be rainy season. So you have to check the impact during the rainy season. You have to check the impact during the summer season. But now the law has been that you just have to check the impact in just one season, and it can be on any season of the year. So that way, a lot of industries can easily get the licenses, easily get the clearances. So we see this amount of dichotomy in Modi's what Modi promises and what Modi delivers. So there's over promise and there's under delivery, and this is where the dichotomy comes. And so this is where the dichotomy comes, and the dichotomy it's mostly in the international sphere, because in the international sphere, India tries to portray itself as a global climate leader, but when it comes to domestic production of the natural resources, India tries to make sure that resources are protected after taking the interest of the industry, after taking the interest of the economic growth, after taking the interest of the employment, and which is a perennial debate which keeps on happening under the mind of the policymakers. So now I would like to look into what are the convergent and the divergent, like where Modi and Manmohan Singh kind of converged and where they diverged. Because as a policymaker, you will see certain degree of both. It is a tale of change and continuity. So some people even say that's an old wine in a new bottle. So the idea is that in terms of convergence, both of them believe in technology. Both of them believe in renewable technology. Both believe that technology will be a cornerstone of green growth. Will be a cornerstone of taking India's over dependence of coal to a lesser dependence of coal. And when the COP21 Glasgow summit happened, like there was this very important statement that all the developed countries who don't depend on coal, the developed countries don't depend on coal, so they are always saying that you should eliminate coal. You should eliminate, stop using coal, stop extracting coal. And so they asked for a word called carbon phase out. That we should phase out carbon, and we should phase out carbon by phasing out by phasing out coal mining. So India said that we should phase down, and all the developed countries like China, and other developing countries, they also asked for the phase down. So in the official wordings of the COP21 Glasgow summit, it was said that coal will be phased down and not phased out, because India always try to protect its interests, and India as of now is so much dependent on coal. It's not possible for India to move into completely renewable technology by completely eliminating coal. So I will tell you that that now we are trying to move to a cleaner coal technology. Like all government official documents, they talk about cleaner coal, in where we have efficient air purification system, where efficient smudge systems, where we try to make sure that the air which is coming out from the coal plant is purified before it's coming out. So there is a less damage. We can't eliminate damage, but there is less damage to the environment compared to our previous times. And all in terms of convergence, we also see the ecology versus development debates. That there's a comprehensive debate which plays out in the mind of all policymakers. Like when Great Indian Bustard, we all of us have heard about Great Indian Bustard flying in Rajasthan, which is a very critically endangered species. So when electrification was going on in Rajasthan, and electrification was going on, and all the villages were connected in Rajasthan. Government of India connected a lot. Government of India and Government of Rajasthan, both of them were connecting a lot of electric poles, and the electric poles were automatically leading to a lot of deaths of Great Indian Bustard. So what happened? They went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, all the climate NGOs, they went to the Supreme Court and they said that Great Indian Bustard, there are only 100 of them in India, and they need to be protected because they are critically endangered. So Supreme Court said that take the electric wires underground, don't make them overground. But the government of India said that it will lead to 3 times more cost, and we don't have that kind of money. Like government of Rajasthan doesn't have that kind of money, and we won't be able to electrify all the rural interior villages of Rajasthan if that's the case. So the government of India said, the Supreme Court said that this can't be an excuse. The government of India needs to dive in and provide the required finances to the government of Rajasthan and make sure that we have underground wiring of the entire stretch of Thar Desert, so that this animal, Great Indian Bustard, when they're flying, they don't have to collide in an electric pole, they don't collide in electric wire, and they don't die. So these are the debates which keep on happening, both in terms of Manmohan Singh, both in terms of Modi. And this debate, I don't think it's very easy to negotiate them. You just have to do the tightrope balancing. Because yeah, you have to do the tightrope balancing because the Indian society and the Indian priorities are such, you have to prioritize both. And then we also see a continuous neglect of Indian Forest Service officers. So, as most of you know, that Indian Forest Service officers are the all India service officers. They are considered one of the most stringent recruitment process, because civil service officers, anyone can sit for the exam, but Forest Service officer, you need a biology background or you need a science background to sit for it. Then after training, they are posted in the forest, and after when posting in the forest, most of the time they don't even can man the secretary level post in their own department, like the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The secretary level posts are all manned by the IS officers. And even in the forest, whenever they ask for something, most of the time they are marginalized and they are not, they don't get the requisite, they don't get the requisite opportunities. That's the biggest problem, because animals at the end of the day can't vote. They're mute spectators. So most of the time, unless there's a very big issue in the forest, like an animal has died, or it's all over the media, you won't hear about Indian Forest Service officers doing phenomenal work, who are even staying in the forest, working in the forest, and protecting our most immense important natural resources, the India's biodiversity. So we see the continuous neglect, of IFS officer under both the regime. And when it comes to divergence under Modi and Manmohan Singh, as all of us know, was one of the most learned, educated prime ministers India has ever had. So he was a doctorate. He has been taught by John F. Keynes. He believed in Adam Smith model. So he believed in the trickle down effect. So when you believe in the all these theories of trickle down effect, that the development will come, economic growth will come, and eventually India will be an inclusive growth society, and so for which we need rapid economic growth, rapid job creation. So Manmohan Singh came from that background, and Modi came from an from an RSS background, where has been he has stayed in the RSS sakhas. He has been a chief minister of Gujarat for a very long period of time. He has seen environmental problem in the Sir Creek of Gujarat. So both of them backgrounds also decided how they talked, how they walked, and how they decided their priorities. Because Manmohan Singh, as obviously as Ramchandra Guha talks, was a very economically sounded person. He believed that an economic growth needs to go on, and the environment can take a backseat for the time being. But economic growth needs to be a priority for a country like India. Then, in terms of triangular model, we see a triangular model and MEA-led model. So under Modi, we see a triangular model. What is a triangular model? So in a triangular model, the Prime Minister's office directly gives briefs to the MOFCC, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and MEA, Minister of External Affairs, whenever they go for any negotiation. So whenever you attend any COP summit, like last year they went to Dubai. So earlier it was a Chandrasekhar Dasgupta kind of diplomats who used to lead the delegation. Now the idea is that both for Indian Forest Service officer and Indian Foreign Service officers, both will be the part of the delegation, and who will be the senior most of them with the most amount of experience in climate change and climate negotiation will be leading the delegation, and it will directly reporting to the PMO. So we see a triangular model: PMO at the top, MOFCC at the one end, and MEA at the one end. So when they go to Dubai last year, when they are going, will be going to Baku this year in November, they will be following this triangular model, which is in contrast to the MEA-led model of Manmohan Singh. MEA-led model, I just told you, is just a diplomat-led model. That's the diplomats lead the negotiation, and the Indian Forest Service officer at the back seat, and there is not much involvement of the Prime Minister too in a negotiation unless it's a very critical issue. Then also we see that Manmohan Singh's policy was more reactive because of the that he did not have the luxury of time. So Modi had a luxury of time, he had a temporal luxury for which his policies are more proactive because a lot of things were happening together. India was negotiating with USA for the civil nuclear deal. India was negotiating for a UNSC Security Council. India was negotiating for MTCR seat. India was negotiating for NPT waiver. India was also getting pressure from the BRICS countries because they were seen as the more developed of the developing countries. So they had more pressure. The Indians had pressure from the SIDS country, small island developing states. So all this ensured that India was under a lot of pressure. So most of his policies were very reactive. But Modi, you can see the certain amount of proactive policy making because he had obviously had a luxury of time because all these things had happened. And India had in a very comfortable position. He knows that it needs to be part of the solution. It needs to be part of the climate leadership position. And India knows that it can easily achieve that. It's very easily achievable. So yeah. So the idea is then also we see it, about the engagement of parliament. Earlier there was a lot of engagement in the parliament. So whenever any climate negotiation where used to take place, whenever any climate debate used to take place, we see that all the minister we used to have heated debates in the parliament. The opposition used to attack the government used to attack the opposition, and we have seen wonderful debates during the INC International Congress regime. But under Modi's regime, we see less of debates in the parliament. So that's also a divergence we can see. We have some debates which I will tell you in the later on, but that amount of proportion is comparatively lesser. And another very funny thing about is about global indices. So all of us love exams and all of us hate exams. Like I'm pretty sure that all of us hate getting bad marks in exams. So whenever you make get bad marks, you feel very disheartened. You feel very disillusioned, but, and you feel very sad. So India is to get regularly bad markings in all the environmental indicators, like environmental performance index, where India was regularly topping from the bottom, 180 rank. And it was completely very bad for India. And Manmohan Singh used to say that we need to improve. Jairam Ramesh used to say we need to improve, and India is to keep on trying to improve. But Modi, within charismatic fashion, said that all this are propaganda, all this are Western propaganda, all this are global propaganda to stop India's growth story. We are going to launch our own indices. So make your own question paper, set your own question paper, and be the topper. So that's a beautiful, part of it. The new indices which are come up by ORF, like Climate Performance Index, which was recently released by Observer Research Foundation, a leading Indian think tank, in which India topped in 2022. So India now doesn't really take so seriously the global indices of environment performance like earlier days. So this has also we see a shift in terms of how we perceive the global indices. Then also, Modi had a temporal luxury, which I told you that he had a luxury of time because his term started from 2014 onwards, and all these movements in the diplomatic arena has already happened before that. So next we will go to how India's climate diplomacy has been practiced. So we will look into both the things that why India has moved from its dominant theme, like why we saw the Ramesh dip, why we saw India move from the growth stonewallers to climate, climate progressive realists, progressive internationally. We'll also see this, and we will also see that how India adopting a force-track strategy under Prime Minister Modi to negotiate, to talk, to ideate. With various countries. So, in terms of the why India changes from its dominant theme. So it's a very interesting that a lot of factors were happening, and a lot of factors were happening as Jagdish Thakur and Anthony Lestrovich said. It was happening at both the levels, both at the domestic level and both at the international level. So it took India to a irreversible path. Now you will see no one in India, most mainstream political parties in India, don't say that climate change is a hoax, and we can completely ignore it. Everyone says that climate change is real, climate change is happening, and we need to take a more pragmatic, climate action-oriented stance towards it. So what really changed India from its dominant stance of growth stonewallers to this? So we see more voices in the policy making took the mantle away from the risk-averse bureaucrats to politicians. So Jairam Ramesh, Jayanti Natarajan, Manmohan Singh, Narendra Modi, Bhupendra Yadav, all these people, they are politicians. And when politicians make the decisions, they can take the risk because they only need to wait election. And if the electorate doesn't really change their votes as per their policies, they can take the risk. But bureaucrats always are very risk averse because they always fear if they take more than they brief. Like Chandrasekhar Das Gupta, he was always very he was scared that at 1992 he was scared that if he moved from the growth growth first stone wallers to very more tangible unilateral concession, he will hurt India's stand and can also hurt his position in the ministry, which he has written in his monograph like Ambassador Years. So the idea is that we moved from to the politicians and we from the bureaucrats. So this politician making the decision automatically made India more risk prone and take a more ambitious decision in climate change. Then we see that we also had increased knowledge of our vulnerabilities. Like a lot of reports are were coming. What are the reports? Reports like climate vulnerability index, reports like climate change performance index, reports like environment protection index, reports like IPCC six assessment report. IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change and Environment Protection Index, and all these reports they talk about a very simple thing that India is a very climate vulnerable country. India's population is highly climate vulnerable. India is going to lose a lot of GDP, lot of economic wealth if it doesn't take a very climate progressive action agenda. And so Indian government realized that if it needs to do something, and if they do something and they package it in a way, in a manner which showed that they are taking for the entire humanity, for the entire global south, for the entire people at large, then automatically it can be a win-win solution for both the political parties, win-win solution for the Indian foreign policy, and win-win solution also for the common average Indians. So India also recognized that it can adopt a co-benefits approach, that climate action brought with it material benefits. So what is a co-benefit approach? Co-benefits approach is that you can do both. You don't need to be a jack of only one trade. You can be a jack of all trades in terms of environment protection and in terms of sustainable lifestyle. So India can develop, improve health, improve energy security, and reduce fossil fuel dependence by doing both. Then also we see that there's an increased pressure from business association like FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce, Indian Chamber of Industry, like Confederation of Indian Industry, and ASSOCHAM. All this with ASSOCHAM, all these business bodies, they were continuously putting India pressure on the Indian government to adopt carbon trading, to adopt clean development mechanism of Kyoto Protocol, and all these pressures automatically led to government of India taking a more flexible position, coming up from coming away from the growth first stone wallers. Then we see also pressure from various international groupings like the basic Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. They were considered the more developed among the developing countries. So they had more pressure from the developed nations, from the G7, from the G10, from the G20 to adopt a more progressive agenda in terms of climate change. Then they had pressure from the houses, association of small island state like countries like Maldives, Tuvalu, Kiribati. Then you have pressure from the G77. G77 is another grouping from the global south. So you have pressure from the global south also to do something, because if you don't do something, the global south also feels under threatened, and India can be a bridge, which I talked about in the later side, how India can be a bridge between the global north and global south in giving renewable technology and giving green mechanisms for a green growth trajectory. And also we see a tremendous amount of US bone homie and economic growth. So after economic liberalization, after the Indian economy opening up, we see Haldiram going to US, McDonald's coming to India, Starbucks coming to India, and also a lot of India US bone homie because of the India US civil nuclear deal and India having a bipartisan support from both from the Republican and the Democrats in the USA. So this led to more pressure on the government of India that to take a more progressive stance on climate policies. So India moved to a four-track strategy under Prime Minister Modi. So how India negotiates is very interesting to know. In any global fora, for climate policies and climate politics. So as all of us know, India is very good in multilateral adaptation. So Ashok Mukherjee, who was a former permanent special, who was the ambassador of the permanent mission of India to the India to the UN. Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, he argues that India is very good in multilateral adaptation. So whenever India needs to talk in any multilateral fora or win any election in multilateral fora, it get support from both the global south, global north, and the basic countries, the BRIC country, and it can do a very well forum shopping and institutional proliferation. And that explains how India in 2021 Glasgow summit changed the official text from phasing down of coal to from phasing out of coal to phasing down of coal. So India is very good in multilateral adaptation. India is very good in even defining P5 countries. Like we defeated the member of the defeated the UK's candidate in International Court of Justice to elect our own candidate, Justice Dalbir Bhandari, in 2017. By ensuring that we have more votes than him in the International General Assembly. So in India, is a very good position in in multilateral adaptation. In terms of unilateral adaptation, India has launched its own programs. Like India has launched its International Solar Alliance. India launched its coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure. It tries to make sure that through various unilateral, which launched by India, in which India is in a prominent position, it can focus its efforts and on specific sectors, on specific geography, and it can create unilateral groupings through which it can negotiate, it can talk and make climate policies more robust. So it also tries to be do triangular bridging. So how does it does triangular bridging? Triangular bridge, it tries to be a bridge between the global north and the global south. So it tries to make sure whatever technologies, whatever new ideas, the new opportunities which it gets in becoming green power, becoming an emerging green trajectory, it automatically transfers them to the the global south countries, which with which it has friendly relations. Like India gives for free vaccines under the vaccine Maitri scheme. So India automatically ensures that it is a bridge between the global north and the global south in green technology, in renewable technology, and in doing so, it tries to be get the best of both worlds. And India also try to do bilateral expansion. So what is bilateral expansion? That it tries to make sure that there's good relation, wonderful relation with some countries like the P5 countries. It can have some good countries like Germany, UAE, Saudi Arabia, USA. And whenever these countries come up with new technology, innovative idea, which are very expensive, and India always tries to ensure that it get the technologies from them, it get the technology, or it get the mechanism how to make those technology, and it can make them under the Make in India regime. So it always tries to make sure that it get the best of all the worlds to this four track strategy which India adopts. It adopts a strategy of multilateral adaptation by creating unilaterals, tries to be a bridge between the global south and the global north. It also tries to maintain good bilateral relation for climate climate assistance from countries which are very good in green technology, which are very good in green energy, renewable energies like Japan, European Union, Germany, UAE, Saudi, etc. So now we'll look into how India's domestic politics, that we are into the fourth and the last part of the presentation, has been influenced by India's climate politics. So India's energy politics has been influencing climate politics for a very long period of time. And we can see this in terms of LPG cylinder subsidies. We can see this in terms of electrical subsidies for farmers. We can see this in terms of electrical subsidy, energy subsidies, electrical subsidies, and then also everything is influenced by climate change, because whenever you have floods, whenever you have droughts, it automatically becomes an election issue. Whenever you have heat waves, and we also see a lot of child marriages happening due to climate change. How does it happen? You have water wives, like few places in Rajasthan and other places in India where you, like in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh also, where you don't have water. People marry multiple times, will marry multiple times to have extra hands to bring water, because the water is almost 2 to 5 miles away, potable water source. So you have water wives for that. So climate change is a very much influencing climate Indian politics, but we don't see its impact on a tangible level, but we are slowly witnessing it too. So EL Center for Climate Change Communication, they conducted a survey recently in 2023, and where they checked the perception of Indians on climate change. And it was found that most of the Indians believe that climate change is real, climate change is happening. And unlike the most of the Republicans of USA, we believe that climate change is happening. 80% of Indians are of the sample size were on the front page that climate change is happening, and the government needs to do something on climate change. Government needs to take a stance on climate change. And and we also see that DMK MP, like the Dramida Muneta Kazagam, which is a Tamil Nadu based party, they even said that how Chennai's floods are impacting the lives of the people in the parliament, that how cities are transforming into rivers, and rivers are transforming into seas through climate change. So all these issues are being popped up, and we also see that how in Satara in Maharashtra, the Shiv Sena and BJP, they lost election because there was a mismanagement of floods. Because there was floods, you had mismanaged it, and it automatically led to a Congress and the NCP winning the elections. So the domestic politics influenced by climate, there's no doubt of it, and it will continue to play a more dominant and more pressing role with time to come. So if we look into, I just was looking into the political party and how climate change analysis can be made as per the 2024 election manifesto. Because 2024 was an election year, so all the parties came out with a manifesto. And when you come out with a manifesto, you can even talk about everything, including climate. So before 2019, you see no parties talking about climate. In the party in 2024, you see all parties, all national party at least given some amount of importance to climate, some amount of pages attention to climate change. So we will look into where they're focusing. Uh, so BJP, as I told you, is very clear that they are focusing on lifestyle for environment. They are focusing on net zero. They are focusing on successfully achieving Panchamrit goals. But they're conveniently forgetting something. What are they forgetting? They're forgetting forest conservation. They're forgetting indigenous community. They're forgetting wildlife conservation. So you just have focus on protecting your or electoral base. If you see even AAP is also focused on protecting electoral base, because where AAP wins, Aam Aadmi Party wins wins elections in Punjab and in Delhi. So most of their election manifesto is talking about air pollution, which is a very big problem in Delhi. Most of the time, where during November, October, I have to always go out with the marks on my like face marks on my face, because air pollution is very bad. And they also talk about free electricity, because 200 units of electricity is free in Delhi. They talked about problems which are faced by the people of Delhi, like sewage treatment, like air pollution, like availability of clean potable water from Haryana and things like that. And then if you talked about All India Trinamool Congress is very much in the news all over the West Bengal. It has only two-page climate change. It talks about climate change only for two pages. The first page is about climate change in India, in which it has copy and pasted the climate change agendas from Paris Climate Summit, in which it talks about that India needs to do solar energy, it needs to do wind energy, water energy, it needs to achieve renewable energy technology. The second page is on Bengal. So it talks about that we need to protect wetland ecosystem, we need to protect Sundarban, we need to ensure that the people of West Bengal get adequate water resources, they get adequate natural resources, and so on and so forth. So you can understand that all the parties are placating, are making the policies, climate policies, as per their electoral constituencies, as per the people who are going to vote for them, as per the people who are going to vote for them, who are going to elect them, and what they want. So INC, International Congress, they talked about deforestation, they talked about wildlife conservation. The deforestation needs to stop, wildlife need to be protected, and they talked about all the laws which have been brought under their regime, like the International Congress, which I told you. And they also talked about creating new renewable energy jobs, like Green Transition Fund and Green New Deal Investment Program. This will bring new jobs in the market, green jobs in the market. So they talk about all these things. So sorry. Yeah. So in the next slide, we see the CPI and BSP. What do they talk about? So the CPI, as a Communist Party of India, they are very interestingly talk about that the people rights need to be protected. They are more concerned about the people's right who are working in this non-renewable energy resources sector, like the people who work in coal fields, the people who work in oil fields, the people who work in natural gas fields. That when we move to a completely renewable green technology, these people should not be unemployed. These people shouldn't be completely on the streets. These people needs to be taken care of, and for this we need to ensure that they are not jobless, and the government needs to do something to give them a great, make ensure that they are upskilled, reskilled, and they can easily transition. They can easily transition to a to green technology, to renewable technology, etc. And in Bahujan Samaj Party, it talks about that how coal and this all types of non-renewable technology leads to exploitation of the Dalits, socially marginalized section of the society. So it talks about that how energy security needs to be completely egalitarian, how energy security needs to be also free from all types of caste biasness. And it needs to take care that how the all types of people should get the equal opportunity of the entire energy pie, of green energy pie. So now I will come to the conclusion and the recommendation plan. So last but not the least, so what India needs to do, because as of now all of you must be thinking that India needs to do something, and what India needs to do. So there are some recommendations, some thoughts which I came across. So India, as of all of us have understood by now, doesn't face any existential Godzilla kind of fight for survival. It is a more nuance that we don't have Greta Thunberg kind of person sitting on the streets and saying that if you don't let the Green Party, then we won't have a government, we won't have a we won't survive. Then also we are not in a country like Maldives where if you don't take don't take any position, don't take any action, then automatically you will go underwater. So it is not an essential Godzilla kind of survival as of now. It's a more nuance. So it is a battle of priorities. It's a battle of choices. It is a battle of how you navigate the development priorities by by growing, developing, providing fast, accessible, renewable technologies to vast population of India. Because India, as of now, we know that it's a very hungry country in terms of energy, in terms of ambition, in terms of growth, and so we need to provide them jobs, we need to provide them opportunities, and which will also need to provide by taking care of the environment. So what we need to do, so in terms of foreign policy, we need to adopt we need to we need to have a special envoy of climate change. So PM special envoy of change, like we had in like Sham Sharan was in 2009. We need to have someone who is representing India on the foreign stage. US also has a person like this. So someone like this has to go and represent India and talk about India's climate priorities. And then we need to have a dedicated team of of environment division under the MEA. Now, what MEA doesn't have an environment division, it takes help from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. But most of the time, MEA is also dealing with environment related affairs. It's also dealing with environment related matters. So MEA having an environmental division, which even if it's staffed by Indian Forest Service officers, will be a very positive movement in the direction of environmental protection, green growth, and climate security. And we also need to have climate wings. Like we have we have wings of our economy, we have wings for military, we have wings for for defense cooperation, economic cooperation. Then we have the renewable energy technologies cooperation. So we need to have also have climate wings, renewable energy technology wing, climate wings in various Indian mission abroad, especially with our major partners like the P5 countries, and countries which are very good in green technology like Germany, Japan, France, and then South Korea. We can have like Taiwan. We can have green climate wings in the Indian missions abroad. And then India of tomorrow, in the domestic sphere, it needs to give more key to the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So we cannot make the laws very flexible, because when you make the laws flexible, as I told you, which is happening under Prime Minister Modi, it automatically leads to more easier exploitation, easier easier exploitation of the biodiversity, easier exploitation of the wildlife, and it leads to more more scarcity of the beautiful, wonderful biodiversity hotspot which we have in India. And then we need to create an independent body, like the US has an environmental protection agency. So we need to create some body like that, and we need to also ensure rigorous enforcement of EIA, environmental impact assessment, environmental laws under one health approach. So I would like to end with a quote that prakriti prakruta rakshita. So the idea is the nature protect those who protects nature. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a wonderful audience.
Well, Shantan, I will have to first say congratulations. It was an extensively covered presentation, and for our semester 5 girls, you have done quite a bit of my job. Thank you for that. But yes, a lot I have also learned. Here, I would like to put it across to the girls as well as to you that Dubash's book is part of, article is part of their reference list as well. So, a fundamental part of the climate regime politics is being covered. But I much appreciate the party wise breakup that you have given, which is very, very important for them to understand that electoral politics is going to be environmental in future as well. The floor is now open for question, girls. I see a few hands going up. I hope they are questions. So please unmute yourself and ask your question to sir, address to sir.
Ma'am, may
Uh,
I go ahead?
Yes, Mehuli, go ahead.
Good morning, sir. I'm Mehuli Rudra and I have a question. So, there are many legal measures that restrict companies from harming the climate in their production process. But are there any legal measures that restrict civilians and especially elite civilians from overconsumption? Because many a times their overconsumption goes unchecked. So, that can harm the climate a lot.
Okay. Ma'am, can I take all the questions together and then I can address them one by one?
Yes, of course.
Mm.
Kangsha, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, sir. First of all, thank you for the information that you have provided. My question was in the beginning, you mentioned the data that per capita, when we are talking about the energy consumption, India ranks third overall. But when we look at it closely, per capita, we are around 125th. So that's not a very major contribution.
Yes.
And even we agree to the common but differentiated responsibilities because the developed countries started their industrialization from 1700 and we are
Hmm.
just a developing economy. But the thing is, India has much at stake as compared to other countries because the a huge population of India is vulnerable if it comes to the climate crisis. I mean, the USA and China can say all what they want, but their citizens and their residents will not be that much affected in the initial phase as the population of India, especially the lower income groups, especially the
Hmm.
people who are living in that areas who are more vulnerable to climate change, the rising sea levels.
Yeah. So what is
So
the
how do
question?
we balance? How do we balance this? Because we keep saying that it is the responsibilities of everyone, but at the end of the day, it is we who are bearing the brunt. It is the developing nations who are bearing the brunt of the climate change more as compared to the others developed countries.
Okay.
That's a classical
Thank you.
problem.
Hmm.
Yes, Konkona, go ahead.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for this lecture. I would like to ask you, sir, can we mitigate the effects of climate change? I mean, what is the role that human can play to mitigate the effects of climate change? Thank you, sir. That's my
Effects of
question.
effects of climate change. ठीक है. Anything else? Okay. Uh, let's start. So, Mehuli, I will start with the legal measures. So, thank you for the wonderful question. About the legal measures, we do have laws prohibiting companies from overexploitation. And we do have laws like environmental impact assessment, which talks about that other companies' impact need to be safeguarded. But when it comes to civilians, and if we're talking about rich elite civilians over consuming, we don't exactly have laws prohibiting their overconsumption. You just have a list of fundamental duties which talks about protection of environmental protect, which talks about environmental protection and things like that. But yeah, we don't have laws which can prohibit Ambani showing a gala pre-wedding for 3 days and consuming so much of energy. There is no laws prohibiting that. And as a country, I think we should move to some amount of equity, if you ask for my opinion. But it's very difficult to impose it because um, I don't know. matlab, the people who are at the top, the politician, the people, they will say that they need the energy access. They need the more amount of energy access for their own work, and so it's not very easy to tangibly create a barrier and create a threshold where that you can only consume this amount of energy, after which you will be penalized. And so we need to work on that and come up with a comprehensive framework, I think. So it will take some time, I think. To address your question, we don't have laws prohibiting overconsumption of elite Indians. So then the second question was Khakshan Jahan. So you talked about, you raised a very important and very pivotal point of my entire presentation, that how India always has to negotiate, and India as a developing country always has to find itself in a position where it has competing priorities. Like I keep on talking about the competing priorities that India has to face, and Indians as a very vulnerable community. Like India will face the brunt much more than Canada will face, than USA will face, than European Union will face. And I totally agree with you on that. Now, how do we balance this? This is the biggest question which is facing the policymakers right now. The idea is that we can't go back to the phase where we used to say that we won't do anything. Like we are talking about the growth first stone wallers. We can't go back to that phase because that bus has passed, and we need to go do something on climate change. And so we try to make sure that our priorities are intact. So the government of India's position is that we are not going to compromise on coal. As of now, in every government document you will never see any arguments that we are going to completely phase out coal. We are talking about clean coal technologies, where we are going to ensure that the smoke coming out, the smudge coming out is cleaner. And we are also talking about creating more renewable energy technology so that we can have a more sustainable growth trajectory. We are talking about how we can improving our India's ranking ease of doing business. That how India can be more, create more jobs, create more industries, create more economic employment. So that's how we are trying to negotiate in that. We are not trying to take any measures that which can completely cut off India's growth trajectory. And I will give an example. Like European Union recently came up with carbon border adjustment mechanism. So what was that? The carbon border adjustment mechanism says that whenever in any developing countries like India, send them, like export them steel, expose them aluminum, fertilizers, it will automatically taxed. India will have to, India and developing country will have to pay carbon tax because India's production is not completely environmental friendly. So India completely and vehemently opposed this. India said that as a developing country who are not part of the problem or not part of creating the problem, you cannot tax us there. And if you impose a tax like carbon border adjustment mechanism on India, then we will also enforce regulatory tariffs on you, and we will also take you to WTO. So European Union has not enforced carbon border adjustment mechanism as of now. So the argument is like that. So whenever India knows that it needs to do something, and needs to do something by keeping its priorities intact, keeping its national interests intact, and we are trying to do the tightrope walking. And how best to walk that, we are trying to find it as far as possible to the best of our ability, to the best of our knowledge which is available to us. And how we can mitigate the effects of climate change. So Konkona asked that question. So thank you, Konkona, for this question. I would like to tell you that we can do a lot in both in terms of individual level and in terms of as a society, as a state. So as an individual level, we need to adopt something like the lifestyle for environment. So whenever you do something like you use a brush, try to use a bamboo brush. Try to use paper cups. Like in JNU, we are using paper cup these days. We are using paper straws these days. So whenever you use renewable, like green technology based things, or which things will be which are biodegradable, then automatically we don't pollute. If you, like India's banned single use plastics, so that's something we can do at the level of state. You can ban single use plastic, but as an individual, we need to ensure that we don't use plastic. We try to always make sure that whatever we eat, whatever we consume, whatever we buy, they're all biodegradable, and we don't overconsume. Like in USA, there's a habit of people that you leave cars on the streets. Like when you don't need cars, you just drop them on the street, take out the number plates and everything, and leave it there, and you go and buy a new car. People who can afford, they can do that. But in India, I feel that as Indians, we need to adopt a more sustainable base of lifestyle, where if your car is not working, you can sell it in a second-hand party, and you can try to make sure that it is helping them. And you try to use transport like metro. Like whenever you use Delhi metro, we have an app which shows that how much carbon you are saving by not using a car, not using your private modes of communication. So that's something we can do at an individual level. In terms of state level, we can ban plastics, we can ban non-biodegradable source of consumption. We can try to make sure that our trajectory is more green. Like you can install solar panels, which we do in Kolkata, which we do in Delhi. You can use wind energy, geothermal energy, ocean energy, hydroelectric energy, and try to ensure that the entire energy mix, you have more amount of renewable and source of energies. We can do it at the state level. In terms of society also, we need to ensure that the level of awareness increases, because the general level of awareness is much more than USA. Because as per the Yale Center of Climate Change Communication, as per the survey, we have 80% of people know climate change is happening. They can see some amount of climate change, and they believe that climate change is real. So we need to tell them that how climate change can be combated, how climate change can be mitigated, and what they need to do and how they need to do to build a more sustainable lifestyle for our future generations. So that's the idea of sustainability. That we need to keep the earth as we found it. We can't pollute it. We cannot deforest our way to growth. We cannot pollute our way to prosperity. So that's more or less, Konkona. I hope I have answered your question.
Any other question? Yes, Ishika, go ahead.
Ishika?
Good morning, sir.
Yes, Ishika.
Sir, it was a very nice discussion. It is not a question, but it is a request. Sir, it would be very grateful if you could share this presentation to us.
Yes, I've already shared it with ma'am. I think she can
I
forward
will
to you.
share.
Yeah.
Ishika, the idea is not to collect PDF of presentation, okay? That's your typical problem. You ask a question if you have.
Oh, no, no, ma'am. It was just a request because it was very much integrated. That's why I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. It's okay. Anyone else? Any more question? Then Shanton, before we conclude, I have a question for you. It's more of
Yes,
an
ma'am.
it's more because you are a researcher in the field, you have the knowledge of the things that are developing. Um, my question primarily is centered around the idea that all the ambition, all the promises that the present government's environment or climate policy is making,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
it in any way well rooted into our community? Are we making promises because we are part of multiple multilateral organization, or are we really integrating this climate policy with the community? Because ultimately, when it comes to working with the community, it is you and I as
Hmm.
researchers, we are going down. It is the NGOs, the INGOs are also, international NGOs are also involved. But is the government very integrated in this? Because I have a very simple observation, like what
Hmm.
happens with the elephants in the development track, whether it is Uti, whether it is North Bengal. Recently we know what happened with regard to an expecting mother elephant being burned alive. How much is the community aware of the same community which was known for preserving biodiversity, the same communities which have taught the historical and oral knowledges of preserving our conserving our environment? Don't you think that somewhere we are losing the bridge between policy doctrines and empowering the community?
Yes, ma'am. To address your question, ma'am, I also feel that there is a lot of things happening at the top level, and we are making policies at the ivory towers, and things are not translating on the ground. But the silver lining is that, ma'am, the funding is increasing in terms of climate politics and climate research. So, compared to 10 years ago, now we have more people researching on climate. Now we have more universities who are working on climate. So, I think that the awareness level is going up, but it also, you can say that it's going up in big cities, it's going up on in air conditioned rooms. So, what about the people at the ground? And the people at the ground, ma'am, the problem is that about animal elephant collision, but we always talk about train collisions in North Bengal. Like trains come and they hit the elephant at night, and you see carcasses of the bodies. So for that, the government, as a policy measure, is trying to adopt anti-collision tracks in the entire place. You will have a speed limit of how, like 20 km per hour. You will have be completely hooting, and that they are the standard SOPs which the government is working on. But when it comes to involving the people of the regions, indigenous communities, and telling them that why can't you just keep the people away from that, away from the away from the tracks or away from the region, and not protecting the elephant, protecting the animals, protecting the wildlife, then I feel that the awareness is ma'am, the awareness in some communities high, the awareness in some communities low. So I feel it's a mixed picture, ma'am. In some communities which are integrated with the environment for a very long period of time, like the Sinhalese, like it's the Sentinelese, the Jarvas of Andaman. I've seen when I went to Andaman and Nicobar Islands that they are very much integrated with, with the biosphere reserve. And whenever any animals fall sick, they even they even protect them and take them to their own houses and take care of them, like even wild animals. Like there are pictures available that how a mother is taking care of a wild jackal because
Yes.
she's
The little Nicobar Islands, yes,
yeah,
that's where.
yeah. So but the problem is that, ma'am, places in the mainland, in the Indian mainland, where indigenous communities are living, you can say the awareness level is lower, and when animals come into their fields, come into their agricultural lands, they chase away the element, and sometimes they do it violently, and sometimes it leads to animal and human clashes. So the easiest way to tackle this problem the government is thinking is like creating honey fences, like bees fences, not honey fences, bees fences. Like you create a bees fences, and protect the indigenous communities from the forest. So whenever elephant, tiger or any jackal wolves are coming, you will see the bees roaming around, and they hate the noise and they hate the bees getting stung by bees, so they won't come near it. So we are looking towards this kind of solutions. But when it comes to the level of awareness, ma'am, there is a lot to work on, ma'am. That it's very less work has been done, and there's a lot to work to make India completely a lifestyle for environment oriented society. And that's something we both of us, like as researchers, as scholars, we need to work on. And yeah, we need to involve the entire community, and we need to ensure the awareness increases, and we are also tell them the ways and the means by which they can prevent this, like the fences of bees. It's an innovative idea to prevent animal human contact. So we need to come out with more innovative environment friendly ways by which we can prevent this kind of incidents, like entire pregnant elephant being burned alive, or trained elephant collision with the trains, or yeah, the ideas. The idea is, ma'am, yeah, yeah, that's the idea, and we need to work a lot, I feel, and this is a work in progress, I feel. So it will take time, but will eventually happen. And when climate change becomes a more and more electoral issue, this will automatically keep on happening, I feel, because now, as I told you in the I told you in the slides that Satara, in a place called Satara in Maharashtra, the BJP lost the election, Shiv Sena lost the election because they did mismanagement of the floods. And the floods, if they become more rampant, if the landslides become more rampant, and climate change impacts become more rampant, which will eventually happen if we don't take climate mitigation and climate adaptation measures, then issues will become more electoral topics. And when they become more electoral topics, the automatic effect will be the awareness will increase. And when the awareness will increase, I think the funding and the opportunities of influencing them will increase. So this will be a work in progress.
So there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
uh, now now we'll move forward to the formal vote of thanks. But before that, Shantan, can you go into the first picture of your slide? That would be a little helpful. We'll take a screenshot for our documentation. The
Yes, ma'am.
entire meeting is also recorded. So once it's on YouTube, I will share the link with you as well. Okay.
Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right. Yeah, welcome. Just be there for a few more minutes. Shambhavi, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. On behalf of the Department of Political Science at Loreto College, Kolkata, it is my honor to extend this formal vote of thanks. I would like to express our gratitude to Mr. Sayantan Bandyopadhyay for sharing your valuable insights and enhancing our understanding of climate policy. We are grateful that, sir, you addressed our questions and doubt. Thank you so much once again. I would also like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our officiating principal, Dr. Sister A. Nirmala, for her continuous encouragement and support. Furthermore, I would like to thank Madam Donna Chung and Sir Shomik Bandyopadhyay for organizing this online session. I am deeply grateful to our professors for providing us with such enriching opportunities to learn and expand our horizons. Lastly, thank you to our audience across all the departments for joining us and for their active participation. Good morning and thank you once again.
Thank you, Shambhavi. Thank you, Shantan. We look forward to collaborate with you in future and
Thank you
hope to
so
meet
much,
you
ma'am.
soon. Yes,
Yes,
all
ma'am.
the best. All
Thank you
the
so
best.
much, ma'am.
I'll be in touch with you in the next few days.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and really had a wonderful time interacting with all of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I will meet you soon when I'm in Kolkata, ma'am.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you, girls. You may start leaving the meet.
Thank you, ma'am.